In starting the Mental Wellness Initiative, we really tried to capture a conceptualization rather than offer a definition of mental wellness. We felt it would be presumptuous to try and define something that we were still exploring. But we wanted to give a conceptualization of mental wellness as we were looking at it, which is to live a life that is experienced within as being full, using our mental and emotional capacities to their fullest, with a sense of continued growth throughout the lifespan, the adult lifespan, underpinned by brain growth. There's neuroscience evidence that the brain can grow and expand and develop new neural networks and interhemispheric coherence throughout the adult lifespan in the context of the right stimuli, methodologies, life experiences. This is a total counterpoint to the fear that we all have of late adulthood, of diminished brain capacity. Brain plasticity equals hope. And that is the big picture of mental wellness. Hope for what? Hope for realization of deep potential for higher stages of human development and growth throughout the adult lifespan. Mental health, until now, has been the big picture. But mental health has been conceptualized in terms of movement beyond mental illness, recovery from mental illness, maintaining a state of general well-being. This is valid. But there's nothing embedded in the conceptualization of mental health as we've seen it from the World Health Organizations, health ministries around the world, and so on. Nothing embedded in this conceptualization of mental health that says we can grow in adulthood. Not only can we grow in adulthood, but that our brains are designed to keep growing throughout adulthood, to reach stages that Western society has termed wisdom, that Eastern society has termed enlightenment, that those seeds for continued brain development and higher human experience are programmed into our nervous system. So this is a difference between mental health and mental wellness. And when we're talking about mental wellness in the Mental Wellness Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute, we're talking about prevention. We're talking about self-directedness. We're not necessarily talking about the intervention of a therapist, although we want therapists to use the pathways that we've identified, drawing on the evidence that we've presented. But we're talking about autonomy, technologies such as meditation. Dance has been found to increase white and grey matter in the brain, particularly not just in the motor areas as you would expect, but in the communication, the frontal areas of the brain, as dance has been a source of communication in early human evolution, communicating with animals that our ancestors would have hunted, communicating with the spirits of their ancestors, dancing to communicate with the forces that guide life and the universe, and so on. So, and meditation, there's a lot of evidence showing increased grey and white matter in the brain, prefrontal alpha coherence. I do transcendental meditation, and as a clinical psychologist, that was one of the very early things that interested me in transcendental meditation, the prefrontal alpha coherence, knowing that the prefrontal area of the brain is most important in higher reasoning, higher experience, intuition, moral development, and so on. So we have this body of evidence now that shows not only the potential, but the programmed readiness of the brain to be activated and grow and give us these experiences of higher human functioning as we progress throughout adulthood. And using the pathways that we've identified for mental wellness, many pathways, one mountaintop, as we've said, will guaranteed put people on the path to mental wellness. The evidence is there, given systematic, regular practice and progress down that pathway. So prevention and continued development are the hallmarks of the mental wellness framework that we're working with. So what is the connection between mental wellness and happiness? We're fortunate that we're connected with the World Happiness Report. My colleague from Oxford University, Anna-Manuel Denève, is in the audience now and is one of the authors of the United Nations World Happiness Report, which is edited by Professor Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University and one or two colleagues. I discussed the World Happiness Report with Professor Sachs, and of course I've discussed it with Anna-Manuel. And interestingly, one of the things that Professor Sachs said to me when we had a conversation about this in December of 2016, he said that all of the research showed that even if people have a stable family situation, stable finances, a positive prospect for themselves and their families throughout their life course, they are not happy if they feel they're being governed, in his words, by a bunch of crooks. So mental health and happiness are not quite the same thing. What the World Happiness Report has found and made absolutely center stage in its presentation and in its PR is that without mental health, there is no happiness. Wealth alone does not bring happiness. Political stability, a social and health system that supports the citizens is not sufficient. Mental health is the absolute core of happiness indicators in individuals, in societies, and in nations. And I think this theme of living a well life really does capture something that is part of our zeitgeist right now. It's part of the spirit of our time, living a well life. But as a counterpoint to that, we're living in challenging times. So I think living a well life in challenging times is a reality tester for us all. We can't ignore what's happened in Vegas this month. We can't ignore what happened in Texas and the Caribbean in recent weeks. We can't ignore what's happening in Yemen and the shocking exodus of Rohingyas from Myanmar. On and on and on. This is our world. It impacts us. We look at the news. We are empathic beings. There's research on this. The emotion centers of pain in our brain light up when we experience empathy. We experience empathy when we observe these tragedies, these disasters that we're helpless about. We can't simply sit in the breakers in Palm Beach and talk about living a well life and going and doing yoga at dawn and feeling this is it. It is it, but how do we do this in a world that we know is a challenged and challenging world? I think that's really our take home. And this is not a new question. It is the issue that brought the Buddha out of his palace as a young Indian prince, protected from suffering, living a privileged life, living a well life, when he saw suffering and age outside the palace. And he thought, how can I live well in the palace when there is suffering outside? And that took him on a journey that has enriched lives for 2,500 years subsequently. Equanimity within, compassion without are really the core of living a well life.